So palibutan siya ng mga bundok at populated na siya dito. Populated siya. So dito tayo.
Sites fortresses all along the lake, but now it's also a national park. Why? One of the main reasons is because it's a bird habitat. So in Europe, there's roughly about 500 different bird species, and out of those 500 types, roughly about 280 could be found on the lake. So this, the territory of the lake changes because the water levels change throughout the year, but on average it's about 450 square kilometers. It's in this area. So on your left hand side, right here we see there's a body of water. That's the Skadar Lake, and that's also the biggest lake of the whole of the Balkan Peninsula. We share it with Albania. A third of the lake belongs to Albania, and it's protected by the state on each side. Here in Montenegro, it's a national park. In Albania, it's protected as from the state, by the state. I'm sorry, it's protected by the state. It's a nature reservoir. So then, on each side, it's kind of it's protected by both Montenegro and Albania, and kind of what it's most known for is because it's a bird habitat. During those migration periods, you can find as much as 200,000 birds on the lake itself. Different types, as I said, 280 that can be found there throughout the year. However, a trademark, let's say, of a symbol of the Skadar Lake are pelicans, Dalmatian pelicans. And that central area, the area around the lake, that's also in Montenegro, we only have three big valleys. And the biggest one is in that central area close to the lake. So that's also our wine region. The biggest, well, the Montenegrin wine company, which is called Plantaja, which is the wine we had. Those of you that tried wine at the restaurant this morning, that's probably the wine that you had, Vranac. So Plantaja is the national wine company, and we have, well, the biggest vineyards in this part of Europe that are all part of the same complex, and they are in the central part. Something that's quite interesting is if anyone decides to ever come back to Montenegro, so if you go to the central part where the vineyards are, one of the wine cellars it's called Shipchanik, and the wine cellar itself is in a location that used to be a tunnel in which they hid warplanes. So airplanes that belonged to the military of Montenegro, that was during Yugoslavia. So it's at the bottom of a hill, a tunnel that's 350 meters long, so about 1,000 feet. And now it's one of the three cellars they mostly use it because it's a tunnel that has very good conditions for aging wine, so they age wine in the cellar, but also because the whole area is quite nice, and it's a historical site of sorts because it was a tunnel where they hid those airplanes, and you can see the old meeting room, and so it's also a place that you can visit to do wine tasting by the tunnel, right by where the cellar now is. The vineyards already start, and the vineyards are kind of, there's something that cuts them in half, which is the old runway of the airport. So there's a bit of history and wine and all that. It's a very cool place to visit. And all along the lake of Skadar, there are a whole lot of vineyards that are smaller. Kind of, if you want a more personal experience, then you go and do wine tasting in some of the wineries, or you can go around or you can sometimes even visit their homes, and because it's on a smaller scale, smaller businesses, family-owned wineries, and you can visit their vineyards, wine cellars, and try their wines. So that's kind of a wine production. It's mostly around the central part of Montenegro. By the way, if you want to get a bottle as a gift, then we have Vranac, which is our typical wine, but there's a line that's called Procorde. procorde in Latin means for the heart. So they did research for about 7 years and found that our wine was good for the heart. It's very rich in antioxidants, rich in tannins. So that's why. So that I guess that the rest of wines are good for the soul. Ours happens to be good good for the heart as well. So if we look outside of the window on our left-hand side, we can see that there's a fortress there. And that's one of the signs that we are getting closer to the coast, because fortresses were normally this type of fortress. It was normally built by the Austrians here. So this fortress also represented a border between Montenegro and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So we're kind of driven around the perimeter of that old Montenegro. And there's tunnel here. This tunnel here. On the other side of the tunnel, we will already see Budva, and we'll be back on the coast, but it will be quite a contrast as compared to what we saw by now. So a whole lot of blue. Welcome back to the Adriatic. We could see all the way onto the other side. We'd reach the coast of Italy. So from here, we could wave to Italy and say, hi, ciao bella, ciao Italia. Because it's on the other side. We have Italy, we have, well, to be more specific, the Italian region that we're facing is Puglia. So it's the very bottom of the boot of Italy. That's what we are straight across from. We used to have a ferry line connecting Bar, which is a city in Montenegro, and Bari, a city in Puglia in Italy. So Bar Bari. Now we have Bar Ancona. It's less confusing because there's just one letter of a difference between Bar and Bari. The city that we see beneath us, that's Budva. I will tell you a little bit more about Budva as we get closer, because we'll be able to better distinguish between the different parts. So if you want, you can snap some pictures of the coast, enjoy the view a bit, and in about 5-10 minutes we'll get a bit closer to Budva, and as we start seeing it better, I will be telling you a bit more about it. We've gotten a bit closer, so we can see, if we look straight ahead, you see there's a tiny island that's connected to the land by a strand of sand. Do we all see it? Yes? Okay, I'll point we'll soon be straight ahead of the island, so I'll mention it again in case someone didn't see it very clearly. So that's Sveti Stefan. Saint Stephen would be the name translated to English. It's an island that, well, when you drive past it, you see walls, you see Mediterranean architecture, you see the terracotta roofs and stone houses, and you think it's just another historical site. However, it's actually one of the most exclusive parts of the coast of Montenegro. And so the history of the island is that everything on it was built, let's say, 15th, 16th centuries, and they would mostly hide women and children there during Ottoman attacks, and or pirate attacks in this area. And then it was a fisherman's village for a while with, well, it had up to 22 families living on the island. But then as we get closer to modern times, it was almost abandoned. And it was during Yugoslavia that they had the idea of turning it into a hotel. So that's what they did. But it was quite a unique hotel because they kept the exterior, they kept the stone walls, they kept the walls around the island, but they remodeled everything that was inside. So it was kind of a city hotel of sorts. Because the whole island, it was a little town, and it was now a hotel. And the plan, the idea they had behind it, they wanted to make it into the most exclusive hotel of the eastern Mediterranean coast. And that meant that they paid extreme attention to detail when it came to everything that was on the island. So we visited the court of King Nicholas. The style of furniture and the type, it was quite similar. It was very, very exclusive. Just a detail is that they had ordered a custom-made cutlery set for the island that came from Paris with silver and gold, and it cost roughly about 800,000 marks. That's over 400,000 euros just for a cutlery set. And then their staff was trained for a long while before they wanted it to feel exclusive, but at the same time to have for guests to feel at home. And that's why they wanted their staff to speak as many languages as possible. Of course, not be fluent in all of the languages, but they would organize courses that the hotel would pay for, and not when it came to service, of course, but also learning languages. So then there's a lot of people that would come and visit and then come back because of that. For example, I remember a chat with the former CEO of the island, of the hotel, that said that Sophia Loren, for example, she visited several times and she spent about 2 weeks. And of course there was a team of chefs. One of the, for that time, it was one of the best chefs in the world was actually working on there, so it meant that she could have, of course, whatever she wanted, but she wanted to prepare her own food, so they would share some of the recipes of the food that she liked so much. It was kind of, so we call it, this area the Duckley Gardens. These are apart hotels, condos. Steven Seagal has an apartment there. There's their private beach. If you want to spend a day there, you can. But you have to shell out 500 euros for a beach bed. And here, this is Bečići. We see that the beach itself is lined with 4- and 5-star hotels. One of these, the biggest one, as we approach, we'll see that it has the letters S on it. So Hotel Splendid, it's the one that's mentioned in one of the James Bond movies. But once again, I think we talked a little bit about it and said that the movie wasn't actually shot here. They mentioned Montenegro in several localities, but it wasn't actually shot here. However, they do mention Montenegro. And a lot of these hotels, now that we're on the topic of James Bond, a lot of these hotels have casinos. And sometimes a nickname for Budva is that it's the Monte Carlo of Montenegro, or the Monaco of Montenegro, because of the amount of casinos. That's something that attracts a certain crowd as well. So S, the big hotel, the big beige hotel with the letter S on it, that's Splendid, the one that's mentioned in the movie. And it's known for its casino as well, and also the fact that Madonna, the Rolling Stones, and Lenny Kravitz, they all had concerts here in Montenegro, and when they had their concerts, they stayed in that hotel. That's where they stayed, in the Hotel Splendid. So, as far as the eye can see, all of it, all of the coast, that was all Budva. Bečići as well is part of the municipality of Budva. This beach was also, in the 1950s in the 1950s was proclaimed to be the most beautiful beach of Europe, but of course back then we didn't have all of these hotels lining the beach back then. So now as we are getting closer, we'll drive through the residential area of Budva, but we'll also see the old town. So that's why I said that Budva is full of contrasts, because you see the modern part and you think, oh, this must be a newer settlement, but actually this is one of the oldest settlements of Montenegro. because the old town is one of the oldest towns of Montenegro. Its history goes all the way back to the 5th century BC. So would you imagine that the city is 2,500 years old? Now really, when you see that most of it is really modern. Budva is the most modern city of, let's say, of the coast of Montenegro. We'll see Kotor is a bit more historical. So right in front of us, we see the old town. We see the walls, and we see the tower of the Church of St. John. So we follow the beach. At the very end of the beach by the marina, there's the old town. So it's a peninsula. The smallest part of Budva is its old town. And what's interesting about it, it's very picturesque, very cute, very quaint when you get there. Narrow streets, and the typical architecture from this area. But you see traces of Romans, Greeks, Illyrians there as well. And then as we get closer to modern, also there's parts of the Byzantine Empire. Then later on, Venice, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So you can see traces of all of those different civilizations there, which is really interesting. One of my favorite museums in Montenegro is the Archaeological Museum of Budva. And then especially because I remember I was so fascinated with all the artifacts that they found, and kind of those layers of different civilizations you can find in Budva. And then I remember chatting with the lovely girl that was the guide at the museum, and she showed me a helmet it's the oldest artifact that they have in the museum. So the helmet itself is 2,500 years old roughly. So it's from the 5th century BC, and you'd think, oh my god, this is so special. A team of scientists must have found it. But do you know how the helmet was found? So there's a site right next to the old town of Budva, an ancient necropolis. That's where it was found, and at the time it was found, kids were playing football with it. So it's an interesting way to find something that's so old. But it's a nice contrast, thinking of Roman remains and even Greek and Illyrian remains in an area that is now so modern. We see here this is the residential area of Budva. Once again, there are some hotels here too.